You are a traitor. You don't feel like one yet. Not by a long stretch. On the surface you are making reasonable, even admirable changes, small, sensible rituals that have nothing dramatic about them, waking up at 5 a.m., swapping the late-night beers for a jug of water, politely declining the noise of a group chat that only compares people and rehashes old grievances instead of nurturing ideas. To anyone watching, you're simply leveling up. You are incremental, measured, deliberate. But underneath the polite resignation and quiet progress, your nervous system has already filed a record. Your subconscious has labeled you. It knows what your conscious mind is still negotiating. You are leaving the tribe. That word, traitor, lands heavy. It isn't logical. It isn't an accurate summary of what you're doing. But tribal brains do not always run on logic. In the deep parts of you that evolved to keep you safe from predators and punishment, leaving the group once meant exposure, vulnerability, death. Your primitive circuitry reads departure as betrayal, and betrayal as danger. So when you begin to outgrow the people and patterns that used to define you, a biological alarm goes off. Your chest tightens. There's a burning heat behind your sternum, not from excitement, but from shame, from fear, from the perception that you've abandoned someone who relied on you to maintain the known. You aren't struggling because you're failing. You're struggling because you're winning, and winning, in that small, old part of the brain that expects everyone to move in lockstep, feels illicit. It feels like a crime against the people you love. In the next 10 minutes, we are going to perform an autopsy on your soul. We will hold your guilt up to the light and look at it from every angle. We will dissect the most quiet, lethal killer of high performers, the guilt of becoming better. This isn't a motivational pep talk to shame you into doing more. It's a forensic examination. I will show you how the people around you, the stories you inherited, and even your own psychology conspire to try to murder your new self before it can walk through the door you fought to open. By the time we finish, you will have instruments, ideas, practices, and mental armor, to outgrow your environment without apologizing for the space you take up. No more playing small. No more dimming your light for the sake of another's comfort. Today, we kill the martyr inside you. Think back to the last time you accomplished something that mattered. Maybe you lost 30 pounds and your body started to move with a different confidence. Maybe you closed a deal that changed your life trajectory and made your bank account read like a new language. Perhaps you learned a discipline, you meditated daily, you wrote consistently, you learned to say no, and the results began to accumulate. You walk into the familiar room where your old friends sit, the place where your identity used to be unremarkable and comforting. You want to share the news. You hope for congratulations, for curiosity, for the warmth that used to bind you together. Instead you feel the air thin. Someone smiles, but the smile is small, practiced. There is a micro-expression that flashes and is gone, a tightening around the eyes, the tilt of a mouth, a breath that carries distance. Must be nice, they say, as if they have been handed a verdict. Don't forget where you came from, another chimes in, not as advice but as a tether. You feel the weight of their expectations press against your shoulders. Instead of standing tall, you begin to shrink. You downplay it. You complain about the hard work in a way that emphasizes effort over outcome. You almost brag about the struggle so they can let their resentment off the hook. You are, imperceptibly, dimming your bulb so no one else has to squint. This isn't humility. This isn't authenticity. It's self-sabotage wrapped in loyalty. Why does growth feel like betrayal? On the surface, the phenomenon has many names. People call it the crab mentality, the idea that crabs in a bucket will pull down any crab that tries to climb out, so none escape. But that's a metaphor for a deeper structural feature of human psychology. When one person improves, that person becomes an unintentional mirror for everyone who has chosen to remain where they are. Your health reflects their neglect. Your discipline highlights their chaos. Your abundance spotlights their scarcity. You don't simply rise, you create a contrast, a living, breathing critique of the status quo that others have accepted. But why does that trigger anger, distance, or subtle sabotage? Because your climb removes the convenient excuses they tell themselves. When everyone is mired in the same limitations, blame can be diffuse and comforting: the system, bad luck, limited talent, the wrong timing. Your growth takes away those justifications. It says, silently, this is possible. That proposition is dangerous. It requires a painful choice: either they accept the possibility and try, which means confronting their fear, taking responsibility, and risking failure, or they reject it and preserve their narrative by undermining you. Because the psychological cost of change is steep, many people will protect their existing worldview by pushing back against anyone who threatens it. There's another layer: the internal maps you learned as a child. If in your household being good meant being quiet, compliant, or invisible, if your value was tied to being agreeable rather than visible, then your nervous system learned that standing out equals risk. This is an internalized neglect schema. Success becomes, in that schema, a danger signal. You might even experience maturational guilt, the irrational sense that by becoming more of yourself you are taking away something that rightfully belonged to someone else, or that you are abandoning an identity that protected you from harm in childhood. This guilt is real at the feeling level, but it's an illusion at the facts level. There is no finite pie of success that you're stealing from the people you love. Your life getting better does not mathematically or morally subtract from theirs. Yet the emotional truth, what you feel in your bones, operates independently of conditional truth. That's why the guilt is such a powerful saboteur: it feels like evidence, even when it is not. The dark psychological mechanisms at work. Let's unpack some of the cognitive and emotional mechanics that conspire to make your old self try to sabotage your new self. Projection. When someone is angry about their own lack of progress, they may project that frustration onto you. Instead of confronting their fear or inertia, they label you as arrogant, elitist, or ungrateful. Projection is a defense mechanism. It's their inability to tolerate the discrepancy between who they are and who they could be. Enmeshment. In families and close groups, identities can become entangled. You are not just an individual, you are a role: the dependable one, the black sheep, the caretaker, the family historian. When you shift, you change the system. Systems resist change because the roles are predictable and comfortable, even if they're harmful. Resentment as control. Subconsciously, maintaining someone else's dependence can be a way of maintaining control. If a loved one's options are limited, so are yours. When you grow, control shifts, and some people will respond by trying to pull you back to re-establish equilibrium. Cognitive dissonance. Your success forces others to reconcile two incompatible truths: I could do better, and I'm not doing it. To reduce the dissonance, many people will adopt a narrative that preserves their self-image. They will dismiss your achievement as luck, cheat, or betrayal. These mechanisms can exist in the people around you, but they can also live inside you. You will catch yourself undercutting your success with self-deprecating comments, martyr complexes, or charitable regressions, behaviors where you unconsciously regress to match the group, instead of inviting the group to rise with you. Elias, a case study. Meet Elias. He was the first in his extended family to escape a generational squeeze of poverty and low expectation. He moved to the city, learned a trade, then taught himself code. He started a company that solved a small but stubborn problem, and over several years, the venture snowballed. It wasn't meteoric overnight success, but it was steady and real: customers, revenue, and access to opportunities that none of his family had ever seen. He bought a modest house in a good neighborhood, floor-to-ceiling windows that let in sunlight he'd never known mattered. He wore $500 boots, not because he loved the price tag, but because he'd grown to appreciate craftsmanship and durability when his life demanded reliability. He called his mother once a week. He sent money back sometimes. But every trip home felt heavier. Conversations congregated around scarcity: the rising price of eggs, the failing truck, the account that was always empty by the 20th. The tone of those conversations cut him in ways he hadn't expected. When he tried to share a success, a new hire, a customer win, the room shifted. "Must be nice," someone would say. Other relatives would sidle into passive-aggressive remarks, "Hope you remember us when you're important." Elias began to respond in kind. He lent money he didn't expect to get back because he wanted to be loved on their terms. He stopped mentioning his travels. He took a drink at the bar to match the pacing and jokes of old friends. In essence, he began to regress to buy safety. He wanted their approval more than he wanted his own integrity. He performed poverty to be accepted in poverty's culture, and in doing so, he betrayed the person who had created the things they all praised. One night, alone in his house with the city lights spooling out like a promise, Elias realized what he had been doing. He wasn't helping his people, he was paying them to remain exactly where they were. He had been bribing their stagnation with his money and attention. By acting poor, he wasn't elevating them. He was lying to himself. If he stayed in the mud to avoid making anyone uncomfortable, the whole family would remain in shadow. If he climbed, at least someone might see the sun and slowly start to follow. That didn't guarantee change for everyone, but it preserved his integrity and created a possibility where there had been none. Elias had to relearn a painful truth: success is not a weapon against your family, it is a lighthouse. You cannot drag someone unwilling into growth, but you can show them an alternate horizon. How do you kill the guilt? You follow a protocol. Think of it less as a checklist and more as a practice of sovereignty, the day-to-day choices that define your right to exist at a higher level without apology. I call it the sovereignty protocol. Step 1, the loyalty audit. Write down the 5 people you are most afraid of outgrowing. Be specific. Name individuals, not categories. For each person, answer 2 questions honestly. What am I sacrificing to keep this person comfortable? What would happen if I stopped sacrificing that part of myself? When you answer, get granular. Are you sacrificing late-night sleep because you took a second job to hold them down? Are you sacrificing your weekend runs because you feel guilty about missing a family dinner? Are you sacrificing truth-telling because you fear their reaction? If the cost you identify equals my future, or my integrity, or my health, the price is too high. Loyalty is admirable, but it is not laudable when it means trading your life's potential for another's comfort. A clear audit creates cognitive distance, it converts vague guilt into concrete facts you can act on. Practice: after you complete the list, read it aloud. Hear how your throat tightens, how your voice may wobble. Acknowledge the discomfort, then remind yourself, boundary making is not betrayal. It is a mature form of love. Step 2, silence the defense mode. You do not owe anyone an explanation for your growth. Every time you justify what you've done, you implicitly ask for permission to be yourself. The space you occupy is not conditional upon anyone else's approval. This looks like practice. When a relative says, "Must be nice," you can respond in multiple ways. Old response: "Yeah, but it took so much work. You wouldn't believe." Sovereignty response: "It has been good. I'm glad for it." The first response opens a negotiation. The second closes it with dignity. Set a rule for yourself: limit justifications to the people who have earned your emotional labor. If someone is invested in your tears more than your truth, give them neither. Practice: prepare 3 brief, calm responses you can use when confronted with passive-aggressive comments. Rehearse them until they feel automatic. Step 3, integrate the villain. In many narratives of growth, someone must be the bad guy. In your family's or friend group's story, you will fill that role. Accept it. There is liberation in owning the part others hate. A villain in this story is often a boundary setter. When you start to say no, others may label you selfish. When you insist on time for your habits, they will call you distant. Expect this reframing. Anticipate it. In owning the role of villain, you take away its power. You stop being shocked when people requaff resentment into accusations. Instead, you see it for what it is, fear wrapped in blame. Practice. Journal the labels you fear hearing and write down the factual behaviors that will provoke them. When you know the script, you are less startled when it plays out. Respond with compassion, then continue. Step 4. Redefine real. There is a cultural lie that staying real requires staying small, broke, or constantly suffering, that authenticity equals scarcity. That is a false equivalence. Real means being congruent with your potential. It means aligning your actions with the person you know you can become. Ask yourself, when did suffering become a virtue in my family? Where did the idea take root that struggle grants you moral authority? Trace the origin. It might be a grandparent who praised sacrifice, or a parent who equated success with betrayal. Names and dates aren't necessary, the work is to dismantle the myth. Saying, "I'm being real," while remaining stuck is not authenticity, it is performance. True reality is living in a way that matches your capacity and your values simultaneously. Practice. Define what real means to you in a single sentence. Post it in a place you'll see daily. Let that definition be your compass when others attempt to shame you into staying small. Step 5. Find a new mirror. You cannot grow in a space where the social baseline is lower than your present peak. Humans need mirrors, people who reflect back the possibility that what you aim for is normal, not exceptional. Find a room, literal or virtual, where your current best is someone else's baseline. This means seeking mentors, peers, or communities where calculated risk, discipline, and generosity are routine. If you lift your eyes and see others who are doing what you aspire to, your progress becomes normalized. It stops feeling like an aberration and starts to feel like the natural next step. Practice. Make 2 lists. One list contains people you admire who are one level above you, the other list contains spaces, meetups, forums, books, podcasts, that can serve as incubators for growth. Schedule time weekly to engage with at least one item on those lists. Practical tools and habits to reinforce sovereignty. Beyond the protocol, you need daily habits that keep your nervous system regulated and your boundaries enforced. Ritualize rest. Growth is not sustainable without recovery. When you let go of the martyr complex, you must still protect your energy. Keep a no ledger. Track the times you say no without guilt and record the outcome. This becomes evidence of your capacity to refuse without catastrophic fallout. Budget for generosity, strategically. If you want to help people you love, design a giving plan that doesn't enable stagnation. Offer time, mentorship, or conditional support that encourages agency rather than dependence. Speak truth with tenderness. You can be honest about your limits and your wants without weaponizing the truth. Use I statements. Avoid moralizing. Practice boundary scripts. People will test your limits. Have ready phrases that are calm, firm, and unemotional. Rehearse them until your tone matches the words. Reframe guilt as growth pain. Pain is often the signal that you're making real change. It doesn't mean you're wrong, it means you're doing something that matters. You are not responsible for the unlived lives of your parents. You are not appointed as the steward of someone else's choices. You aren't responsible for someone's laziness, fear, or decision to remain comfortable in scarcity. You can offer an example. You can extend a hand. You cannot drag someone kicking through the doorway of a life they haven't chosen. The guilt you feel is the skin of your old life stretching as you grow. It hurts. It will scar. Pain is a natural part of evolution. But if you stay small to avoid offending them, you are not being kind, you are being cowardly. You are depriving the world of the person you were meant to be. That is the only real betrayal. Look at your hands. Are they calloused and capable, the hands of someone who builds, or clenched around the rail of a sinking ship? The people who truly love you will be inspired by your ascent. They will adjust, or they will choose not to. The ones who only love the utility of your presence will be angered when you change the terms of your availability. Let them be angry. You can love them and hold the line. The door to the next level is only wide enough for one person at a time. You cannot carry everyone through. You cannot be both transformer and tow truck. You can only show them the path, leave a light on, and step forward. Stop apologizing for your light. Darkness does not need company, it needs illumination. Your brightness is not theft. It is currency. Spend it generously on purpose, not on appeasement. Now, go out and become someone they can't ignore. The only way out of the guilt is through the greatness, not as an act of spite, but as an act of fidelity to who you were made to be. Grow with boundaries. Love without dissolving. Rise without feeling like you must carry the weight of every unwilling traveler. Build the life that needs to be built. The people who matter will find their way. The rest will show you their limits. Become who you are.